Hello and welcome to Encore. Coming up in today's film show, making bread and building bridges between communities in new British film Dough. A distinguished Sherlock Holmes is back on the big screen, and we catch the late Robin Williams in the soul-searching new release Boulevard.
Did you replace Danny with a Muslim kid?
Hey!
His name is Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Was that him?
We have separate beds, separate lives, separate rooms.
Why?
You want to give me a ride?
Well, for all that, I'm joined by our film critic, Lisa Nesselson. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, Olivia.
Now, we're starting with a British film which tackles a big issue, religious difference, with a very light touch, I must say. It's called Dough, which is slang, in your language and in mine, for money. Is this all about pennies and pounds?
Among other things, dough is, of course, slang for cash money, but it's also that stuff that bread and baked goods are made out of. And this delightful contemporary fable is set in a bakery, a kosher bakery in a changing neighborhood in Britain. Jonathan Pryce is terrific as Nat Dion, an observant Jew who is struggling to keep his family business alive in the absence of, well, any family. His father started the bakery in London's East End almost 60 years ago, but Nat's son is a lawyer and interested in, shall we say, another kind of bread. And baking is a demanding trade. You've got to get up, at the crack of dawn, and Nat can't get a decent apprentice. His cleaning woman, a Muslim refugee from Darfur, volunteers her son, Ayash. Black skin and Islam aren't things most people associate with a kosher bakery, but Ayash turns out to be, I'd say, a semi-good employee. The film's central oddity, and it is a wonderful idea, is that Ayash ends up in the possession of some marijuana, which he accidentally ends up dropping into the dough-making machine, and the resulting baked goods, make the little bakery incredibly popular. You've got your challah, you've got your brownies. Customers just can't get enough of products that for some reason make them feel really good. Let's take a look.
You got any baking experience?
I made toast this morning.
All right, trial.
Man, I'm stuck in that bakery so long, I don't have time to deal. Why don't you just do both from the bakery? I have a plan.
Did you replace Danny with a Muslim kid?
Hey, don't bash it. Tough times.
They're very special. Go and spread the word.
So that's quite the secret ingredient then, as I understand. And it's quite a different context for inner city drug dealing. That's not where we would normally see it in London, and not the usual clientele either.
Hardly the usual clientele, that's quite right, which is why the lines out the bakery door are increasingly amusing. Of course, there's a bad guy in the story, an ambitious property developer who needs to secure Nat's little shop. He's a holdout so that he can knock everything down, build a horrible building on that site. This is a bittersweet comedy, but I have to say it's also a pretty effective social issues film about changing neighborhoods, multicultural exchange, and really caring about what you do for your living and tradition and passing it along. I enjoyed it enormously, and I have to say the entire cast couldn't be better.
Okay, well, Dough is set in the England of today, the London of today, in fact, whereas our next film is set in the England of a very different era, the past. Sherlock Holmes is, of course, back on our screens, the most notorious of all private detectives. It feels like he hasn't been away for very long.
We have to remind ourselves he's a fictional character because people feel free to, he's in our shared collective consciousness. Here it's 1947 in rural Sussex, and famous retired detective Sherlock Holmes is 93 years old, and he's suffering from memory loss, a little short-term, a little long-term. His most recent case dates back a full 30 years, and he is now convinced at the end of his life that he has to get to the bottom of how logic failed him back then, which isn't easy since his body and his mind are failing him in the here and now. Let's take a look at this latest incarnation of Holmes, played by Ian McKellen.
What possible motive could that German woman have had to kill Anne? That night, I searched for something to jog my memory of the actual case. And there it was. A picture. A few years ago, I could have told you everything about the woman in that photograph. Certainly, I'd recall what had become of her, whether she was victim or culprit. But that night, I couldn't remember any of it. All I knew for certain was that the case was my last, and it was why I left the profession, came down here, retired to my bees.
I see you've got some sleuthing tools with you today. Of course, the magnifying glass and a little extra grey matter.
Well, I was going to say this is something I carry along with me if I need a slightly more brain power, but I think I'll just say that this is actually a much bigger replica of Donald Trump's brain this week that was shipped to me by a very well-connected individual in the U.S. Back to the topic at hand. So alongside Ian McKellen, who is always extraordinary, his housekeeper, Mrs. Munro, is played by the equally stupendous Laura Linney, who can do no wrong, whatever the role. Here she plays a widow with a very bright 14-year-old son, Roger, who we saw in that excerpt. Roger and Holmes have a mutually satisfying friendship. Roger's mom doesn't want her son to get too attached to the employer because it's reasonable to assume that he won't be her employer indefinitely. Holmes learns along the way that sometimes the absolute truth is inferior to a little bit of fictional information. And director Bill Condon's name may be familiar to you from the movie Dreamgirls or Twilight Saga Breaking Down. The Twilight Saga not breaking down, but breaking dawn. But actually, he's done his finest work with smaller films which are based around real-life characters. I have to point out one of my favorites is Gods and Monsters, also starring McKellen, in which he played James Whale, who was the director of the movie Frankenstein. Condon's Kinsey was about the pioneering sex researcher, and this film, based on Mitch Cullen's 2005 novel, A Slight Trick of the Mind, is just about perfect entertainment.
Okay. Well, next we're moving to a new release here in France. It's coming later this month, in fact, after our hiatus for the Cannes Film Festival, in fact. It's called Boulevard, and it stars the late Robin Williams. This was actually his last on-screen role. What did you think of it?
You know, I mentioned to a few people how much I enjoyed this film, and they asked me, well, were you thinking about, this is the last time Robin Williams acted on the big screen? And to tell you the truth, I forgot I was looking at Robin Williams, and I believed I was watching the character he plays, Nolan. Nolan is incredibly polite and reserved. He's 60 years old. He's worked as a loan officer at the same small branch bank for almost 26 years. He's been married to Joy, extremely well played by Kathy Baker, for 40-some years. They each have their own bedroom. Their bond obviously runs very, very deep. They love each other. Their love is genuine, but, somehow separate. Nolan's mother died 6 months ago. His father is in a nursing home in failing health. And one night, after visiting Dad, Nolan drives down a street where there's a lot of young male hookers hanging out. After almost running him over completely accidentally, Nolan invites a young man named Leo to get in the car, and Leo is a male prostitute, and he expects a standard transaction of sex for money, but Nolan just wants to talk, which is fine with Leo, so long as he gets paid for his time. And gradually, Nolan starts wrestling with his fondness for Leo, making concrete gestures to try and improve the young man's life. Nolan gets in over his head and over his heart, jeopardizing this safe, orderly existence he's built for himself. That's all internal, but in the scene we're about to watch, something comes to the surface when he has his annual luncheon with his college professor best friend. Let's take a look.
Oh my God, Nolan, what happened?
Attractive, huh?
What the hell happened?
Well, there was a filing cabinet, Q through S jammed, and I don't know my own strength.
That has to be the worst excuse I've ever heard, and I'm in position to hear a lot of them. Did the dog eat your homework as well?
I can't fool you, can I?
No, you can't. So what happened? What, were you out fighting crime in your secret life? Or?
There it is. You figured it out.
So I suppose this kind of soul-searching subject matter is quite universal for a film. Nolan could be any man, anywhere.
It absolutely works that way because it's about specific issues, but it has that universal quality quite effortlessly. It turns out it was filmed in Nashville, and the fascinating thing is that it really does feel like it could be any city, and that proves to be the perfect backdrop for what I can't emphasize enough is smart, affecting, and an exploration of whether it's ever too late to make big changes. As I said, Nolan loves his wife. He's been leading an exemplary life, but something's missing, and meeting Leo just makes him feel that he has to make changes and ask himself, what does it really mean to be yourself, to just be yourself, to be comfortable in your own skin? It's touching, it's subtle, it's restrained, it's convincing. The acting is superb. The pacing is just right. It's a small film, but a very nice one. And I walked out of it feeling like I actually knew the characters, and I'd love to know what they're up to now, and that they were real people and not just made-up individuals on a movie screen.
Mm-hmm. It was a bittersweet accomplishment for the end of Robin Williams' career.
Absolutely.
There. Now we're finishing off with a Franco-Belgian film that's called Baden Baden. It's the first feature-length film from Rachel Lang, and it's not actually got that much to do with a German spa town.
Well, I don't know how many films have a running joke about a German spa town named Baden Baden, and I certainly don't know what the French term is for slacker, but that is what our protagonist is here. Anna has broken up with her artist boyfriend, which when we meet him we see was a good idea, but she's still pining away for him, and when we meet her, she's working as a production driver for a motion picture, and she is late, very, very late, delivering an actress to the set. Since she doesn't really have a job after bringing that actress to the airport, just on a whim, she decides to hang on to the rental car that she's supposed to return. It's a very high-end Porsche, and she drives herself to Strasbourg, where her beloved grandmother happens to live. And at age 26, spacey, tomboyish Anna, she's sweet and well-meaning, but I'd say her idea of a long-term plan would be the space between breakfast and lunch. She really doesn't have a vision of the future. When her grandmother Odette ends up in the hospital, she decides to surprise her by redoing her bathroom while she's away, so she'll come home to a brand new shower. But this do-it-yourself project, Anna has absolutely no aptitude for home improvement, but she embarks on it anyway, and she drags into it a clerk from the plumbing supply store where she got the parts. Is building a shower character building. In this case, in this writer-director's hands, I'd say it probably is.
I don't know if building a shower is would be character building for me. I should probably give it a go. Thank you very much, Lisa, for all of that this week. We'll leave you with a clip of Baden Baden, and we'll be catching you, Lisa, at the Cannes Film Festival from next week daily. Thank you at home for watching. Remember, you can get more culture news on our website. We're also on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.
Et t'es resté jusqu'à quelle heure dans le bain?
Jusqu'à ce que l'infirmière arrive le matin pour ma piqûre d'insuline.
J'aimerais bien remplacer une baignoire par une douche, mais j'y connais rien.
Vous allez faire ça toute seule?
Et le tien, le projet?
Moi, je fais une nouvelle salle de bain pour mamie.
Bah oui, je vois ça, la baignoire en plein milieu. C'est n'importe quoi. T'as pas autre chose à faire?
Viens avec nous, on va s'amuser.
Special event. Our reporters and special correspondents will bring you in-depth coverage of the US primaries live on France 24. Follow the 2016 US primaries live on France 24 and France24.com.